Yeah, there we go. That looks good. Hi, let's talk about the 45mm f1.8 and why I think this should be your very first prime lens. As a beginning photographer, you probably bought the EM10 Mark II or the Mark III, one of the entry-level micro four thirds cameras, and they usually come with the 14 to 42 kit lens. And this is an excellent lens. And the other lens that you normally get is the 40 to 150 kit lens. Sometimes they come as a package. And if you don't have this lens yet, honestly, I recommend you get this before you get any prime lenses. I have a video on why I think that's the case, so I'll put a link of it up here for that. But these two lenses, if you already have both of these lenses already, why would you want to get a prime lens? Because honestly, this covers a pretty wide range already in any kind of photography that you might be thinking of. So if you already have these two lenses and you're thinking about getting a prime lens, why do I recommend the 45mm f1.8? It's mainly because I think the 45mm f1.8 will give you the best bang for the buck in terms of value. I mean, this thing is probably their cheapest prime lens of all the lenses they have. And it also will give you the biggest bang in terms of your creativity and your photography and the kind of pictures you take. Because a lot of the reasons people choose prime lenses is they want to be able to shoot in lower light because they have the faster, wider aperture, or they want to shoot at lower ISOs to get less grainy pictures, and or they want to be able to get that blurry background. They want that shallow depth of field, in their portraits and other types of photography. And prime lenses generally do that. But the 45 really, I think, does that best, because think about the other primes. The 12mm f2, great lens. I use that all the time for vlogging, etc. But it doesn't quite give you that shallow depth of field, that blurry background, if that's what you want to go for. All it does really is give you that nice wide angle view in lower light. And then there's the 17mm, and that's a very popular lens. A lot of photographers, it's virtually glued to their camera. And they bought that mainly because they like that focal length. They like to be able to shoot in lower light at lower ISOs, but they're not, generally speaking, looking for that shallow depth of field, because 17mm is still generally too wide to kind of blur out or blow out that background. And then there's the 25mm, and that was really a close second to this. I almost recommended that over this one. But when I thought about it more, that focal length is still a little bit too wide. I mean, it's really the perfect focal length for general photography and allow you to shoot in low light and lower ISOs. But it doesn't really give you much more than that. At least not as much as this will in terms of the depth of field, the shallow depth of field. And that's why I come to this. Now, there is the 75mm f1.8, and that's another lens I own. I own all of these lenses I talked about, but that lens is really, an amazing lens for portrait, but the problem with that lens is you have to be pretty far away, 8-10 feet away at least, 3-4 meters to get a decent shot or a portrait shot. And I think that just kind of takes you away from the subject a little bit. If you're doing paid portrait work and things like that, it's fine, right? But if you're out with your family and your kids, you want to just get some nice shots of them. You don't want to be, 15-20 feet away trying to get a shot. So the 45mm, you can be, maybe 1 or 2 meters away with this and get a really good shot of your kids, of your significant other, and get that nice blurry background. You can also use this in street photography in low light. It'll give you some very interesting compressed images, and you can still shoot at low ISOs. And those are the main reasons I think this 45mm is your best choice. Now, there's two things I recommend you get with this Olympus 45mm, and that is the lens hood, because it doesn't come with one in the box. And this is a little 37mm ring metal lens hood. You can get this on Amazon for about $6-7. And then also these extension tubes. These are typically called macro extension tubes, but this will allow you to convert this lens into an awesome macro lens as well, and I'll do a couple of sample shots of that. Let me just show you the settings I'm using. As you can see, I'm in ISO low with -2 exposure comp, and I've adjusted also the flash to a -1 exposure comp. And I have the kit lens all the way out to 42 millimeters wide open at f5.6. And let's just get a shot here. All right, not bad. So I was able to bring the highlights in from the background, and my face seems pretty well exposed. So that's a good shot with the kit lens. And it's a wonderful lens. It's very, very sharp. All right, so now I have the 45 millimeter, and I've opened it up wide open to f1.8. So let's see what it can do. All right, and that looks really good. And look how blurry the background is. Let's just compare that to the previous, the kit lens. See the difference there? That's the 45, that's the kit lens. Look at the tree line in the background, how that's blown out. And that's one of the primary reasons people like to get prime lenses, is so they can get that shallow depth of field. And if we were to try this with, say, the 17 millimeter or the 25, it wouldn't be quite as dramatic as it is with the 45. I have the 17 here, so let me just show you what that looks like and some of the challenges. So as you can see, in terms of framing, I can stand about this close, which may not be a comfortable distance when you're shooting your family and kids, right? And that's the one thing. And then you can also see already the depth of field. It's not bad, but it's not as good as the 45. So let's just do a quick test shot and I'll show you what that looks like. And if you look at this portrait, it's really not quite as flattering, at least not to my eyes. This is not how I want to look when I get a portrait picture taken of me. You know, it's like my face is a little bit bold a little bit because I'm too close. And then also look at the background. It's not quite as blown out either. We're able to capture a little bit more of the environment, but this is why this is a very popular lens with street photographers, is because it captures more of the environment. Now let me show you how adding the macro extension tube really converts this lens into a really great macro lens as well. So I'm just going to walk around my backyard and look for some flowers here. I haven't cut the grass yet, so there's some nice flowers kind of going right here. All right, so I found some flowers here. So I'm going to give this a shot. And my minimum focusing distance is about this much without any extension tubes on here. So let me acquire focus. Something kind of close. There we go. All right, very nice. Now let's try with a little bit of flash. Whoops, I lost focus. When you're working at these close distances, you have to kind of give the lens a little help. Much better. All right, but let's see how much closer we can get with the extension tubes. All right, so I've attached the extension tubes, and I put both of them on here, that's 16 millimeter and a 10 millimeter. And when you put the extension tubes on, usually I have to turn the camera off and back on again. But look how close I can get now. See how that came out. Very nice. You can see a lot of detail in there. Amazing. Now I've used this lens in my professional portrait work. I've also used it, in my street photography. Here's a few shots here that I've done because it allows me to shoot at much lower ISOs or at fast enough shutter speeds that wouldn't be possible with the kit lens. And with the shallow depth of field, the macro photography with the extension tubes, this is why I think this should be your first prime lens.